In the top of his house in Newark, New Jersey, Sam Moskowitz has filed away copies of every science fiction magazine and book ever published in the English language, and he's read most of them. He started his collection during the Depression in the 30s, when the science fiction magazine covers seemed to him to strike the only optimistic note on the newsstands of New York.
I realized that that science fiction was an expression of 20th century man's hopes, dreams, and aspirations, and that if someone didn't save all these components, that possibly these things would be lost. And there's more involved than merely saving them. They must be saved in some organized order so that they can be referred to. So I never threw anything away. A heavy percentage of science fiction is merely rubbish, bug-eyed monsters, or merely space battles, or something of that nature with very little entertainment value, let alone values of other type. However, science fiction has one thing in its favor, that even a story which may be from a literary standpoint absolute trash may prove very prophetic. The George Washington of science fiction, the father of science fiction, is generally acknowledged to be Hugo Gernsback. Hugo Gernsback published in April 1926 the first science fiction magazine in the history of the world. It was called Amazing Stories. This magazine was a commercial success right from the beginning, and it was fortunate that it was, because Gernsback did more than publish merely the first magazine. He established the ground rules for what is true science fiction.
Hugo Gernsback's rule for writing science fiction is to start with a scientific premise on which everyone agrees. Now 80 years old, he opened the first radio shop in New York in 1909. In 1911, he wrote a story describing with diagrams the basic principles of radar. He recalls a meeting with Sir Watson Watt, Britain's wartime pioneer of radar.
Sir Watson Watts, he called me up one day and wanted to see me. He said he had read my book and he couldn't possibly believe that I was first with radar, and he wanted to see the original story in Modern Electrics in 1911. It was then that he claimed that I was the inventor of radar and not he, although I had nothing to do with radar and the Battle of Britain. He was the one who did that, and he still should be thought of as being the first one to use it practically in this way, which I did not do.
Gernsback has published thousands of science fiction stories since 1911. How do scientists react to his ideas?
In the early days, that is before 1930, there was a terrible lot of skepticism. Today, most scientists take me seriously.
An idea that he would like taken seriously is a new use for television.
In times to come, the physician will have, by electronics, some way and means to get the patient's temperature, his respiration, and all the other facts by radio and electronics in such a way that he will know by glancing at a chart exactly what the patient is doing, how he feels, what is happening to him, and so forth. He can then prescribe over the telephone if he wishes, or call him up and tell his wife or his brother what he should do. This is teledoctoring at its best, and I would say within 20 years it should come about. Anything you can think of that is being done today in the space age, we have done before in some way or another in my former magazines.
The latest Gernsback idea is to use the moon as a base for a super laser power plant to generate an energy beam through a donut-shaped spaceship. The spaceship would clutch the beam electronically and make the journey from the Moon to Mars, Gernsback calculates, in 7.3 minutes.